Hey besties, before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching from. Whether it's sunrise in Cameroon, midnight in Georgia, afternoon in Wales, or evening in South Africa. I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. The mahogany door creaked open as Kwame stepped into the moonlit nursery. His Italian leather shoes whispered against the Persian rug. What he saw froze his blood. There, in the antique rocking chair his late wife had chosen, sat Amara, the nanny he'd hired just 3 months ago. Her dark skin glowed silver in the moonlight streaming through the tall windows. His 18-month-old daughter Cassie was nestled against Amara's chest, tiny fingers curled around something that made Kwame's world tilt sideways. Amara was nursing his daughter, her own breast milk flowing into his child's hungry mouth. The sight hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. His hands trembled as he gripped the door frame, wedding ring catching the light. The woman he trusted with his most precious treasure, his only remaining piece of his beloved wife, Zara, was feeding his daughter as if she were her own mother. But wait. There was something else, something that made his breath catch in his throat. The way Cassie's tiny hand rested so naturally on Amara's skin, the peaceful expression on his daughter's face, more content than he'd seen her in months. And Amara's eyes closed in what looked like pure love, tears streaming down her cheeks. What secret was this woman hiding? And why did this forbidden act look so much like salvation? 6 months earlier, Kwame Asante stood in his glass office overlooking Cape Town's waterfront, watching his pharmaceutical company hemorrhage millions with each phone call. Zara had been gone for 2 years, killed in a car accident when Cassie was barely walking. The medical bills from her premature birth had drained even his vast resources. He needed a miracle, or at least a nanny who could work for practically nothing. That's when Amara Okafor walked into his life, 28 years old, with kind eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. She sat across from his massive oak desk in a simple blue dress, hands folded perfectly in her lap. Her references were impeccable, but there was something she wasn't telling him. "Mr. Asante," she said, her voice soft as morning rain, "I need this job more than you could understand. I promise you, I will love your daughter as if she were my own." The words should have comforted him. Instead, they sent a chill down his spine he couldn't explain. "The salary is quite low," he warned, studying her face for any sign of disappointment. "Money isn't everything," she replied, her eyes never leaving his. "Some things are more worth than gold." He hired her that afternoon. He had no idea he was inviting destiny into his home. But Amara carried a secret that would change everything. Hidden beneath their calm exterior was a heart shattered by loss and a body that still ached for the child she'd never been able to save. Amara's first weeks in the Asante mansion felt like living inside a museum. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, Persian carpets covered marble floors, and silence echoed through rooms the size of most people's entire homes. But it was the sound that haunted her, Cassie's constant crying. The little girl was inconsolable. She rejected every bottle, every formula Kwame's endless parade of doctors recommended. Dark circles grew under her huge brown eyes, so much like her mother's in the portraits lining the hallways. Kwame paced the marble floors at night, bouncing his daughter until his arms ached, watching helplessly as she wasted away. "She's losing weight," Dr. Mensah warned during his 3rd visit that week. His worried frown deepened as he examined the listless toddler. "If we can't get her to eat soon." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Amara watched from the corner, her heart breaking with each of Cassie's weak cries. This wasn't just hunger. This was grief. This tiny soul was mourning her mother, rejecting the world that had stolen the only love she'd ever known. That night, As Kwame collapsed in his study with his fourth whiskey, Amara made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. She stood in the nursery, moonlight painting silver patterns on the walls, and unbuttoned her shirt. Her body had been preparing for this moment, responding to Cassie's cries with an ancient wisdom older than civilization itself. But she had no idea Kwame would discover her secret in the most shocking way possible. 3 months before accepting the nanny position, Amara Okafor had been planning a very different life. She stood in the bathroom of her small flat in Observatory, hands shaking as she stared at the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. After 3 years of trying, 3 heartbreaking miscarriages, finally, a miracle. She pressed the test to her chest and sobbed with joy. But happiness in Amara's life had always been temporary. At 26 weeks, during what should have been a routine checkup, Dr. Patel's face went pale as he moved the ultrasound wand across her belly. "I'm sorry, Amara. There's no heartbeat." The stillbirth shattered more than her heart. It broke something fundamental in her soul. But nature had played a cruel trick. Her body didn't understand that her baby was gone. Her milk came in anyway. Her breasts heavy and aching with nourishment meant for arms that would never hold her child. For weeks, she expressed and discarded the milk that should have sustained her daughter. Each drop felt like throwing away liquid love. That's when she saw Kwame's advertisement for a nanny. Something about his desperation called to hers. When she met little Kessie, saw those sad eyes, and heard those hungry cries, her body responded with fierce maternal instinct. But now, standing frozen in the nursery doorway, Kwame's shocked face illuminated by moonlight, Amara realized her secret was about to destroy the only family she had left. "Please," she whispered, clutching Kessie closer. Kwame's voice cut through the nursery like shattered glass. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Amara flinched, but didn't let go of Kessie, who had finally stopped crying for weeks. The little girl's breathing was deep and peaceful. Tiny fingers still curled against Amara's skin. "She was starving," she whispered, her voice breaking. "She was dying, and I couldn't watch anymore." "You had no right!" Kwame stepped closer, his face twisted with rage and something else, something that looked almost like pain. "She's not your child." The words hit Amara like physical blows. "I know that," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Believe me, I know!" Kwame's hands clenched into fists at his sides. This woman had crossed an unforgivable line. But as he looked at his daughter, really looked at her, he saw something that stopped him cold. Kessie's cheeks had color for the first time in months. Her breathing was steady. She looked healthy. "How long?" he demanded. 2 weeks, Amara admitted, her voice barely audible. "I tried everything else first. I swear to you, I tried. But she was wasting away, and my body was ready to feed her." "Your body was ready?" Kwame's voice rose dangerously. "What kind of sick—" "I lost my baby," Amara interrupted, the words exploding from her like a dam bursting. 26 weeks. She died inside me, but my milk came anyway. Every day for months, throwing away milk that could have saved a life." The nursery fell silent, except for Kessie's peaceful breathing. Kwame stared at this woman who had hidden such devastating loss behind gentle smiles and efficient care. But his anger wasn't finished. Not yet. Dawn broke over Cape Town's mountains as Kwame paced his study, whiskey forgotten on his desk. Amara sat rigid in the leather chair across from him, Kessie finally sleeping peacefully in her arms. The sight of his daughter, so content, should have brought him joy. Instead, it filled him with rage. "You manipulated me," he said, his voice cold as winter wind. "You came into my home under false pretenses. I came here to help your daughter survive, and she is surviving. Look at her." He forced himself not to look. If he looked, he might weaken, and weakness was something he couldn't afford. "Pack your things. I'm firing you." Amara's sharp intake of breath cut through the air. "Mr. Asante, please!" "I'll give you an hour," he continued, turning to stare out the window at his manicured gardens. "I want you out of my house, and I never want to see you again." Behind him, he heard Amara stand, heard her footsteps cross the Persian rug, but then she stopped at the door, and her voice, when it came, was stronger than he'd ever heard it. "Fine," she said, "but when Kessie starts crying again, when she stops eating and starts wasting away, remember this moment. Remember that you chose pride over your daughter's life." The door closed with a soft click. Kwame stood alone in his study, surrounded by the trappings of his wealth, and wondered why victory felt so much like loss. Outside, clouds gathered over Table Mountain, promising a storm. He had no idea the real storm was just beginning.
3 days without Amara felt like 3 years. Kessie's cries echoed through the mansion like the wails of a banshee, growing weaker with each passing hour. Kwame hired the most expensive nanny service in Cape Town, but nothing worked. Formula, specialized milk, even emergency feeding tubes. His daughter rejected everything. Dr. Mensah arrived on the 3rd evening, his face grave as he examined the listless toddler. "Her weight has dropped dangerously," he said, avoiding Kwame's eyes. We may need to consider hospitalization." "No." Kwame's voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. "There has to be another way." But there wasn't. Deep down, he knew there wasn't. That night, he found himself standing in Kessie's nursery, holding his dying daughter while rain lashed against the windows. She was so light in his arms, like holding a shadow of the vibrant child she'd been just days ago. Her eyes, Zara's eyes, stared up at him with the same trust they'd always held, even as life slowly ebbed from her tiny body. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he whispered, pressing his lips to her burning forehead. "I'm sorry." Thunder rolled across the mountains, and in that moment, Kwame Asante, billionaire, businessman, proud father, broke. He collapsed to his knees on the nursery floor, clutching his daughter, and sobbed like the lost, desperate man he'd always been beneath the expensive suits and arrogant facade. He had destroyed the one thing that could save his child because of his pride, and now it might be too late. But sometimes, when everything seems lost, the universe offers one final chance at redemption. At 2 a.m., Kwame's Bentley tore through Cape Town's empty streets like a silver bullet. Rain hammered the windshield as he drove towards Observatory, towards the address he'd found in Amara's employment file. His daughter lay unconscious in her car seat, barely breathing. He had to find her, had to swallow his pride and beg for forgiveness, had to save his child before it was too late. The small flat above a bakery was dark, but Kwame pounded on the door anyway, not caring if he woke the entire neighborhood. "Amara!" he shouted over the storm. "Please, I need you!" No answer. Panic rising in his throat, he tried the door. Locked. But Mrs. Peterson from the bakery appeared in her nightgown, keys jangling in her weathered hands. "She left this morning," she said, studying Kwame's desperate face. "She had a suitcase, said she was going home to her family." "Where?" Kwame grabbed the woman's shoulders. "Where is home?" "Some village up in the Eastern Cape. Started with a K. Cook something." Kokstad. Kwame's heart sank. A 5-hour drive in perfect conditions. In this storm, with his daughter fading fast, it might as well be on the moon. But he had to try. As he strapped Kessie back into her car seat, her eyes fluttered open one final time. She looked at him with such trust, such love, that his heart shattered completely. "Hold on, baby girl," he whispered. "Dottie's going to bring her home." The Bentley disappeared into the storm, racing against time and death itself. The mountain pass to Kokstad was a nightmare of shiftbacks and sheer drops, made deadly by sheets of rain that turned the asphalt into a skating rink. Kwame's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as he pushed the Bentley to its limits, hazard lights flashing through the darkness. In the back seat, Kessie's breathing grew shallower with each mile. "Stay with me, baby," he pleaded, glancing in the rearview mirror at his daughter's pale face. "Just a little longer." His phone buzzed with missed calls from Dr. Mensah, from his business partners, from the world he built his identity around. None of it mattered now. Nothing mattered except the tiny life depending on him. At 4 a.m., he skidded into Kokstad's main street, tires screaming against wet pavement. The village was dead quiet, streetlights flickering like dying stars. He had no address, no plan, just desperate hope and a father's love.
Then he saw her. Amara sat on the steps of a small church, still in the blue dress she'd worn the day he fired her. She looked up as his headlights swept across her, and even through the rain and darkness, he could see the surprise in her eyes. Kwame didn't even shut off the engine. He stumbled out of the car, rain soaking through his expensive suit, and fell to his knees in the muddy street. "Please," he sobbed, the word torn from his soul. "She's dying. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, save my daughter." Amara stood slowly, raindrops mixing with tears on her cheeks. Without a word, she walked to the Bentley and opened the back door. Kessie lay motionless in her car seat, barely breathing. "Oh, my sweet girl," Amara whispered, lifting the unconscious child with infinite tenderness. "I'm here. Mama's here." Inside the small church, candlelight flickered against ancient wooden pews as Amara settled into a corner with Kessie. Kwame knelt beside them, watching in wonder as his daughter's eyes fluttered open at the familiar scent and warmth. "That's it, my love," Amara whispered, guiding Kessie to her breast. "Come back to us." For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then Kessie latched on with desperate hunger, tiny hands gripping Amara's shirt as life-giving milk flowed into her starved body. Color began to return to her cheeks almost immediately. Kwame wept openly, his tears falling on the dusty church floor. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. To both of you." Amara looked at him with eyes full of forgiveness. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning, about my baby, about why I could feed her." "You saved her life," Kwame said, his voice breaking. "You saved my daughter's life, and I threw you out like garbage." As dawn broke through the stained glass windows, painting rainbow patterns on the walls, Kwame made a decision that would change everything. He knelt before Amara, this woman who had loved his daughter when he was too proud to accept help. He said, "Marry me, not because you're her nanny, not because you can feed her, but because you love her the way a mother should, because she needs you, and I need you too." Amara's tears fell on Kessie's peaceful face. "Are you sure?" Kwame reached out and touched her daughter's tiny hand, still curled around Amara's finger. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." 1 year later, the mansion that had once echoed with loneliness now rang with laughter. Kessie took her first steps in the garden while her parents watched, hands intertwined. And when their son was born 9 months after their quiet church wedding, Amara nursed both children with a heart finally full of the family she'd always dreamed of. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the most shocking secrets, and sometimes what looks wrong to the world is exactly what makes everything right. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that love always finds a way. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Kwame's shoes? I'll see you in the next story, besties.